Hi, my name is Zach Silverswag from Tiny Ivy, and I'm here today with Dr. Molly Ness, Associate Professor from Fordham University. How you doing, Molly?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks so much for collaborating with us on the spelling blog post that we've just put together.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity. I love talking spelling because I think it's one of those overlooked portions of the foundations of literacy and is so important, but we haven't got it figured out quite right in terms of education yet.
Gotcha. Yeah, definitely. And I hope folks have a chance to read through the whole post, but I thought we could give a little back and forth here and give them some overview. So maybe you can start us off. You know, tell us just a little bit about your background. Why spelling is so important to you? How did you sort of get into this place? And we can start from there.
Sure. So for the last 15 years, I've been a teacher, educator, and reading researcher at Fordham University. I earned my doctorate in reading education at the University of Virginia, which really has been one of the prominent schools to develop word study and focus on the importance of spelling instruction. I have been interested in spelling because, well, I always tell my students, my graduate students, if I knew nothing about a kid, if you just handed me random third grader or random kindergartner, if I knew nothing about them and I wanted to find out where they were with regards to their literacy instruction, I would take a spelling assessment because spelling really is one of the most visible components of a child's linguistic understanding. I know as a former classroom teacher, parents ask a heck of a lot of questions about spelling. You know, parents may not understand phonological awareness and self-teaching hypothesis and all of those things, but a parent at home, particularly these days as parents are being more and more involved in their kids' education, they can look over their kid's shoulder and see spelling as correct or incorrect. So it's so visible to parents and to teachers, but so often we think of spelling instruction as the kid has the word right or they have it wrong, and there's sort of not as much focus on the instructional potential for it.
Yeah. And so let's talk about that. I mean, so how much time do people typically focus on spelling, and you know, how much should they focus? Like, how much of a gap are we talking about?
Sure. So, well, I always think of what I did as a first year classroom teacher. And most of us who have classroom experience always think back and say, man, I wish if I could find that group of kids, however many years down the road, I would apologize to them for all of the well-intentioned teaching errors I made. But I did exactly what we shouldn't be doing, which is at the beginning of the week, I would choose 10 or 15 spelling words. We would do rote memorization. We would write them in sentences. We would practice writing them time and time again. We would do word searches. And then we would have the test on Friday. And the next week, I would see their writing and see those same words or a word that followed the same pattern and see that they were not able to transfer it. So I was sort of a model of what not to do. And I think there's still so much of that in classrooms today. Frankly, I think spelling is really overlooked, spelling and handwriting in particular. We know that kids need to do word study in terms of patterns. So when we give kids words that are unrelated or words that, a list of 10 words that are not connected by a linguistic feature, we're really doing disservice to them. And we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot in using up our instructional time, which is so valuable and so precious. But then we're not getting the transfer that we want to see into kids' independent reading and their independent writing.
Right. As you kind of think, so you talked about there that there's some common things that folks are doing that they think are and some of them are very logical, like the idea that you're going to pull a word list out of a book that you're reading and teach kids how to spell those words. That just as a layman, that seems like something that would make sense, but we're saying that is while better than nothing, probably it's really not the ideal way to teach spelling. So I guess talk more about, like, what are those ideals? So we have this, what are kind of the 3 or 4 bullet points that you'd want to hit to make sure that you had a good spelling program?
Sure. So, well, first of all, good spelling programs begin with word lists that are well chosen and well delivered. So things that are appropriate for where kids are in terms of their linguistic development. In other words, we want spelling lists that hit on the reciprocal relationship between decoding and spelling. So we want kids to be able to spell the words that they read and read the words that they spell. So as you are looking at those words that you may pull from a picture book that you're reading out loud, particularly at the primary grades, the first and second grades in kindergarten, we start to see words that are above the linguistic level of where kids are, and they're not ready for them yet. So I want to see words that are well chosen, words that follow a pattern. In other words, I get the most instructional bang for my buck when I choose a group of words that are related by a linguistic feature. So maybe I do short A words or long O words or what have you, because then we're starting to see that kids can take a pattern and then apply that pattern to their reading and to their decoding, which is so much of the work that you guys are doing is helping with decoding. And that's why we want that reciprocal relationship between decoding and encoding. Encoding being the idea of I can take a word that's in my head or that I hear and then translate it onto paper through spelling.
Yeah. As you think about those word lists and patterns, how do you do with words that are deal with words that are spelled similarly but pronounced differently? So would I teach, through and although with rough and tough, or would you put those in two separate buckets?
I would put them in two separate buckets and have more conversations about some of those words that are those sight words. I think sight words are another thing that we do sort of through rote memorization. And really what we can be doing is we can a fair number of the patterns in sight words actually do follow some of our conventional patterns. So we want to have conversations with our kids about the parts of that sight word that are decodable, so that kids aren't just seeing them as these randomly memorized words. And then I, of course, want to link the words that I'm spelling to their reading. So I want to do things like word hunts, where I take the spelling words and then I say, all right, let's take the decodable text that we're using or whatever we're reading and look for words that fit that pattern, not just necessarily the words on that particular list, but words that fit that pattern as well. So, we're going on a word hunt for our long O words, so that kids can start to see spelling, not just as this like 10-minute instructional thing that's pigeonholed or removed from literacy development, but they start to understand, oh, as I spell these words, I can read them, and then I can transfer all of those skills to my authentic literacy practices.
So that's interesting. So it's almost the reverse of what happened previously, right? So previously we would read a book and then come up with a word list out of that. But there's, what you're suggesting here is come up with a great list of words that's sequenced in a way and developmentally appropriate for the kids to spell, and then sort of use those in writing exercises or reading exercises, or create or find work that's sort of aligned to those words. So that way it's much more contextual.
Sure. And then the teacher can do a lot of modeling of, well, here's a word that I don't know how to spell the entire word, but I know I've covered this part of the word and this part of the word, and it sounds similar to this word that I've already studied, so that we can model some of those decoding skills so that kids can then take unfamiliar words, look at them for patterns that they already do know, and be successful in the encoding of them.
Fantastic. Super, super helpful. Just one last question to wrap up, because I think folks can find more information about it in the article. But if you wanted to suggest a couple of authors that someone that is really interested in the research might dig into, who would it be that you would sort of put as the sort of lead thinkers in the space, lead researchers in the space?
So I am totally digging the work of Richard Gentry right now, and his work Brain Words, which follows so much of the work from David Scher and the self-teaching hypothesis. I think his spelling instructional curriculum, I believe it's through Zaner Blaser, does a really great job. But that book, Brain Words, does a fabulous job of helping us understand the relationship between decoding and encoding, how it all ties into the foundations of literacy, and why we should care as teachers and as parents about spelling instruction.
Wonderful. We'll definitely check that out. So thank you so much, Molly, for your time today, and look forward to chatting again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks for the time.